Welcome to Sit Down News. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody is having a good night, and I hope you all had a good day. So let us first get our sponsor, Ratchet Clothing. I want to give them a shout out. Ratchet is out of the UK. I'll put a link down below. You could check out their site. They added some new items, and I had mentioned that already. I think one of the new items is a bathrobe, and you could get that in any kind of color you want, but you could check them out. We'll put the link down below. All right, down to business. So the latest blog was about the Lucchese Range Rover scam. A lot of people asked me about this and wanted to know a little more, and I put the blog out a couple of days ago, and we'll get started talking about it. But let's go back to the beginning. So everybody understands, the Lucchese family has a Jersey crew out in New Jersey, and the Perners were always part of that crew. At one point in time, they transferred both Ralphie, who's the father, and the son Johnny to the Brooklyn faction, which was our crew out of Staten Island. There was a lot of infighting going on in Jersey. They weren't getting along. There's cousins and brothers and fathers, and they're often referred to as the Hatfields and the McCoys. So after we had Ralphie and Johnny, when they went back to Jersey, they were shipped back to Jersey or transferred back to Jersey, we got Joe Perner, the other son. So Joe Perner now came from Jersey, and he now became part of our crew, which was the Brooklyn faction. And as everybody knows, we were based out of Staten Island. We got to know each other. We got along good. We started becoming very close. We were often together almost daily at times. And at one point, I went to Joey's place of business, which was his job. And Joey worked for a high-end used car dealership, which was called 21st Century Auto Group. And that is in Springfield, New Jersey. And what was going on there, he was a manager. And what was going on there, the Russians started a scam. And what they did is, and in particular, this guy named Dimitri, who was the owner of 21 Auto Group or 21st Century Auto Group. Range Rover has a stipulation. When you try to lease or finance a Range Rover from the United States, they make you sign a non-export policy. It's part of the agreement. You have to sign that before you even do business, or before they even lease you a car or you finance the car. So, and the reason being is, and I explained it a little bit in the blog, in China, Range Rover makes a specific Range Rover for China. And believe it or not, it is a basic model. From what I heard, it didn't even have a moonroof or a sunroof. And that vehicle goes for about $200,000, which is astronomical compared to what you could get a fully loaded Range Rover here in the United States would probably cost you about 110, 125, depending on what it is, maybe even 130. That same Range Rover in China could go upwards towards $400,000. So the markup is insane. So what they were doing was they were going around purchasing these Range Rovers and shipping them off to China. This was a Russian scam, but being that Joe Perner worked for the dealership, he got in on it and he kind of partnered up with them. And one of the places close to them, another dealership very close to them, and for those of you who live in New Jersey, you'll know what I'm talking about, is Ray Catena. Ray Catena has a big dealership, and they sell all high-end cars and trucks, and they sell basically everything. And everywhere you go in Jersey, you see another Ray Catena dealership. So they had burned their bridges with Ray Catena because after a while of getting all these Range Rovers from them, Ray Catena got wind that they were doing what they were not supposed to be doing. They were exporting them to China. And so what happened is that when I got involved, Joey wanted to find people who could get these cars and or get them leased or have good enough credit to get it leased or get them financed. And the first, as I mentioned, the first person that I used, I had good credit. I did one. So I went to a place called Paul Miller Auto Group, and that was in New Jersey. Obviously, I couldn't go to Ray Catena. And I was approved for a nice white, I think a pearl white Range Rover. And before we made the deal, lo and behold, the salesman handed me a paper and he wanted me to read it and sign it that I understood that I was not to export that car anywhere. And of course, I signed it. And a few days later, the deal went through. There was $30,000 that was wired into my account. $22,000 went for a down payment. The other $8,000 I kept, that was mine. And I get the car a couple of days later. And I have to admit, when I went to go pick it up, you don't know if you're going to get jammed up, if they're setting you up or whatnot. But I went and crossed my fingers. Guy gave me the keys. He actually was taking a long time trying to show me, how everything works. And I said, no, I know. I had one before and I never had a Range Rover. And I just wanted to get out of there. So I got the car. I take the Range Rover and I bring it to the dealership where Joe worked. And as I mentioned, it was funny because I parked the car out in front of the place. Yeah, I didn't know. And he said, did you get it? I said, yeah. He says, where'd you park it? I said, oh, I got it parked in the front. So, oh shit, come on, we gotta hide that thing in the back. We can't have it here because, and the reason why he was saying that was that all of the dealerships, and especially in New Jersey, were on to what their dealership was doing. They knew that they were shipping these cars to China. So they didn't really want to sell anyone a car that had to do with that dealership. So I was trying, what Joe wanted me to do was, he wanted me to find people in Long Island and hit the Long Island Range Rover dealerships because they kind of burnt their bridges and in New Jersey, and and they were looking to get out to Long Island and have me get people. And believe it or not, it's not hard to find people with credit, especially in that life and the people that we knew. There were people who had good credit. You had to convince them to go do this. And a lot of people didn't want to get involved, even if there was some money in it for them. And it was a couple of $1,000s in it for them. But what happened is that one day, Joe Perna tells me about a scam that he wants to pull on the Russians. And he wants to get the Russians for a large amount of money. His reasoning is he had just pled guilty to a big gambling case that was out of Jersey. And that coming January, he was going to get sentenced and he was going to go away. He really wasn't sure what his sentence was going to be at the time, but he knew he was going to get some time and go away. He wanted to kind of have a last score, maybe leave his wife some of the extra money that he got from it, and we could all earn off of the score. So what he wanted to do was he wanted to have members of our crew go into the dealership that he worked for and ask for this guy, Dimitri. When Dimitri comes out, whoever's doing the talking is going to basically give him the impression that they're with the West Side. And that, for those of you who don't know what that means that they're with the Genovese family. So they were tricking Dimitri into thinking that guys from the Genovese family were approaching him, and they were there to speak for Ray Katina, because obviously Dimitri knew he did the great Ray Katina. Dimitri didn't know if Ray Katina was with us, was Ray Katina with the West Side, but that was all part of the plan. I myself couldn't be part of that because I met Dimitri while I was in Joe's workplace plenty of times. So he knew me as a friend of Joe. He knew I couldn't be there. But the person that we had in mind was Johnny Sideburns, because Johnny Sideburns never been in the place before. So Johnny Sideburns would come with one or two guys, and they were going to go grab Dimitri, and they were going to tell him, you owe us $1 million. Ray Katina is with us. They were going to do it on Joe Perna's day off, when we knew that Joe Perna wasn't going to be there, so that Dimitri is going to go running to Joe Perna. Joe Perna let them all know who he was, and they all knew, he was a wise guy with the Lucchese family. So Dimitri is going to go running to Joe Perna for help with these other gangsters or wise guys. Joe Perna is going to make believe that he's setting up a sit down with them, and wait a day or two, go back to Dimitri and tell him, listen, they wanted this $1 million. I was able to tell them that you're with me, and they're going to knock it down to 500,000, but you got to pay it. So that was the scam that he was trying to pull on Dimitri. So give me 1 second. I just had to fix something with the blog. And what now happens is that I get a telephone call from Joe Perna one day. He's frantically calling me, telling me, I got to see you. It's very important. You got to come and see me as soon as you could. So I knew there was trouble. Didn't know what it was about, but I knew there was trouble. So now I got to make my way out to Jersey. I meet with him, and he explains that he's fuming. He's saying it's fucking Dimitri and this guy Isaac. I didn't know who Isaac was at the time. They tried to fuck me. So I says, what do you mean? Joe Perna went into, I believe it was Dimitri's office, and he found about 10 or 12, I think it was like 12, I think it was like 10 manila envelopes of deals of Range Rovers that he shipped out to China without Joe Perna's knowledge. So they obviously were partners, and they fucked them out of these 10 or so sales that they did, which comes out to a lot of money. So I said, what do you want to do? He says, I want to go grab them. He says, but we'll do it tomorrow. I said, all right. He said, why don't you take that kid Pete with you? Now, who he's referring to is this kid, Pete Tuccio, who we call Peter Pan. And at that time, Pete was with me. Pete's uncle was a capo regime with the Lucchese family, asked me to do him a favor, to put the kid with me, to watch over him. I'm sure people heard me talk about him before. So the next day, I get in touch with this kid, Pete. I tell him, come meet me. We jump in his truck, and he starts driving out to Jersey. I'm explaining a little bit about what's going on and what we're going to do. And I tell him, when we get in there, I do not want you picking your hands up, because that was something that we couldn't have. Joe Perna and myself were friends, and we were gonna handle anything that needed to be handled at the dealership. It was better off that way. And God forbid it went wrong, we didn't want to have to now explain to Joe Cafe that we got his nephew jammed up. So we meet with Joe Perna outside the dealership, and we all walk in. Joe Perna asked, I think it was a secretary or someone behind the counter there, where Dimitri, if Dimitri was in. Dimitri wasn't in. And he walked over to an office, and the door was open, and we see this middle-aged guy, and he looks up at us, and Joe, we walk in, we follow Joe in. And he looked a little concerned. Then he looked worried because we closed the door behind us. Now we got three guys standing there. This guy don't know what's up, but he knows that something's up because he is also part of this scam. And obviously he knows about these 10 or so Range Rovers that they went behind Joe's back with. And during the discussion, Joe was giving him a tongue lashing about what he did, and he knows that he's part of this. And the guy is denying it up and down, up and down. Now, I'm going to stop for a second, and I'm going to once again say, when I'm talking about back then when I was in the life. So not now, back then. At some point, Joe Perna gives the guy a crack. At another point, I had enough of him. I crack him in the face myself. And the guy is not doing well. He's a mess, right? Never expecting this. He's never expecting to get smacked around like this. He's not expecting to deal with us. And this Dimitri's nowhere to be found. So it's all on him right now. Well, in the interim of this, who barges in? This Dimitri. And this Dimitri has a heavy, heavy Russian accent. And he's telling Joe, like, what is this? You know, you're coming here and you're threatening people and whatnot, right? And him and Joe are arguing a little bit. I actually wanted to go after Dimitri. Joe stopped me. He didn't want me to go after Dimitri. He agreed with Dimitri to go into Dimitri's office, which Dimitri wanted to take Isaac with them. We didn't want Isaac. We wanted Isaac to stay where he was. Joe took Dimitri in his office. Now he's leaving Isaac, myself, and the kid Pete in his own office. So what happened is that, and once again, this is back then. I looked on his desk and he had a stapler on the desk. So I took the stapler off the desk and now he's looking at me. He's watching me. I opened the stapler up and I said to him, what do you think, Isaac? There's about 30, 40 staples in here. And he don't answer me. He's just looking. I said, if you don't stop being truthful to us, I'm going to put all of these staples in your head. And now he's frozen like a deer in headlights. And he don't know what to say. He's just staring at me. I said, so it's better if you just admit what you did. Stop denying all of this. We're not going to play these games all day with you. He's just sitting there. With that, his phone starts ringing. His phone's on his desk and he's looking at his phone and the phone rings and rings and rings and stops. And then it's ringing again, text messages, and it's his phone. Somebody's trying to get in touch with him. So he says to me, you know, that's probably my wife. She's going to get nervous if I don't answer. I think the phone wasn't facing up, so he couldn't tell who it was. He says, you know, it would be all right if I answered. He says, listen, don't worry. I'm not going to call the police. I says, let me tell you something, Dimitri. I think I took the phone off the desk. I had the phone now. And he asked for the phone back or whatever. And I said, let me tell you something. Here's your phone. I gave him the phone back. I said, you can answer the phone. I'll tell you what, you could even call the FBI and they could come and get us. You know, they come get us and take us away. When they come and do that, we're going to send more guys here. When they come and get them, we're going to send more guys here. It's never going to stop. So here's your phone, make your call. And he made his quick call. Obviously, it was his wife. He was very brief, whatever the hell he said, and got off the phone. A couple of minutes later, Joe Perna comes back into the office. He said, let's go. We go, we jump in our cars, and we meet. I forget where we met. I think we met in a Dunkin' Donuts somewhere. We were following him. I didn't really know where we were going over that. And he basically said that the guy was denying everything. I said, Joe, we should have really gave it to this Dimitri. No, I didn't want to do that. He says he was making threats that he knows people. He had made this threat earlier. He says, you know, I know people too. That's why I wanted to hit him. And back then. And so what it came down to was that obviously, according to Joe, he didn't think he was going to be able to get anything out of Dimitri because he was denying it and coming up with all kinds of stories about what those 10 or so trucks were about that was exported. But what he did tell me is that he had 3 Range Rovers that belonged to them. They already purchased them, and that they were put away in different garages that Joe had. Obviously he knew people with garages, and that's what they were doing. They couldn't keep everything over in the dealership, so they were kind of hiding these trucks sometimes in garages, and Joe just happened to have 3 of these Range Rovers. So what he said is, you know what I'm going to do? Fuck them. I'm going to individually sell these things, get the money together, comes out, to a significant amount of money, had to be over 300,000. And, I'll take what I'll take, and we'll all whack this up and we'll all make money. Forget about these people. I'm not going back there no more. Who knows if they're going to go to the law or whatnot. I was in agreement. At the end of the day, this took a while, and months were going by all the way up until almost Christmas time. Now, he gets, and I don't know why he did it, but I guess he wanted to be on the up and up with our skipper, Big John. He gets this Big John involved. When Big John gets involved, John's a greedy guy. Somehow, some way, at the end of the day, my end turns out to be $5,000. I went to Joe Perna's house one day. He said, "Here, put this in your pocket." I'm not counting it right there. Later on, when I counted the money, it was $5,000. Now, I wasn't a partner, like he was in the whole scam with the Russians, but I was getting involved, and now we, cracked one of them around and all of that. And I'm involved, I'm obviously, we're on film in the place and all of that, which wasn't a smart move by us. So that 5,000, what I kind of said at the end of the blog, at Christmas time, each member of our crew was kicking up about 6,000. I never did, but that was kind of the figure that we were supposed to kick up. And if you think about it, at the end of the day, I really made nothing. I mean, aside from the 8,000 that I made with that one truck, because John's going to get that money back at Christmas time anyway. So John got involved, did his usual backdoor move. He wasn't involved in none of this. We could have just gave him a little cut and gave him a couple of thousand, and he would have been happy. But he maneuvered his way into probably getting my end of it, and said, "I just give him 5,000, figuring that's the Christmas money. He's going to even get that back." And that's just the way the life goes. And that's really the end of the story. Not much to it. The scam was over. Obviously, the other thing that they were trying to do with Johnny Sideburns, that was squashed as well, because now they couldn't go into place, and they couldn't do that. That probably would have been a better move. I think that he should have just he knew the envelopes that they took, whatever it was, about 10 trucks, eat that, send Sideburns in, maybe raise the price that, the fake price that they want for Ray Katina, maybe make it 1.5 million, something like that. And there would have been more money in doing that than selling the Range Rovers. The most they could have got is maybe 300,000 or a little less. They could have got a lot more than that, but that was the way they played it. In the end, it wasn't worth it for me in the end, but that's just how the life goes. Anyway, I'm going to wish everyone a good night. If you have not subscribed to this channel, you could do so down below. I'll put a link if anyone wants to read the blog and you haven't. I'll put a link for the blog down below on sitdownnews.com. If you have not watched Unlimited Substance podcast, you could go on YouTube and subscribe to that as well. I appreciate everyone who has been subscribing to both channels. And that's really it. I'm going to wish you all a good night. I'm going to go have my dinner right now. I'm starving. And that's about it. Ciao for now.